What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're here with some takeaways. That's right, we had a presser today from Mr. Brad Holmes. We got to hear from the Lions GM, and I don't know when's the last time we heard from Brad Holmes. Was it the last draft? It may have been. I remember they were putting out videos. I remember when they had like the behind the scenes of the Lions draft. That may have been the last time we've heard from Brad Holmes. I don't really remember. But today, it was kind of like the end of the season presser where you talk about the team, you talk about what your plan is going forward. There's really not a lot of like straight up answers in this. You can ask him about Tracy Walker, but he's not going to say, yeah, we're re-signing that guy. So there's not a lot of straight answers, but we do have still a pretty good amount of takeaways. So I just wanted to go through the key points that I took away from Brad Holmes' closing presser of the 2021/22 NFL season. All right, I thought we might as well do this. It was about a 30-minute video. It's on the Lions YouTube channel, and they also put it on through Twitter.
The city's been down, and it found a way to get up. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. We're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Let's talk a little bit about what Brad Holmes said today, his closing presser. He started off by thanking Sheila Ford, the support staff, everybody like that. Sheila Ford for her patience with their plan in what he called a trying season. A lot of adversity. We know it was a rough one. Okay, there was a lot of injuries this year, which they're always going to happen. You're always going to have injuries. Some teams in the NFL really got hurt by injuries this year, not just us. But we did have a lot. Plus, the COVID thing has just added a whole nother element to this. And actually, Brad Holmes said it's really tough this season was the COVID situation because you really couldn't predict or plan out anything. You didn't know when guys were going to hit the COVID list. So it was hard for a week to have that, roster constructed, not knowing what was going to happen and when it was going to happen to get guys prepared to play in the next game for depth purposes and things like that. But he thanks Sheila Ford Hamp for her patience. He also thanks the fans for their patience. He thanked us. Okay, awesome. He said this, sticking with us as we are laying the foundation. Now, he said that a lot in this closing presser, but he also said that the foundation has been laid. We have a multi-year plan for sustained success. Okay, that's always exciting. Just to picture that is very exciting, and the Lions could use that because that's really never been the case. Consistently being a winner in the National Football League. The best teams in the league have that. The best teams, the Steelers. It's always the same team. The Steelers, the Patriots, the Packers. It's the same teams that have that sustained success that every single year coming into the year. You really can't count them out in terms of being a playoff threat. You almost kind of assume they're probably going to make it. And if not, it's actually a little bit surprising. The Patriots will be thrown into that mix. Those teams. That's the multi-year plan that the Lions have is for sustained success. And they said this before the season. They didn't want to have it so it's like, okay, well, 1 year we peak, but then after that we kind of fall off. It almost makes you think a little bit of kind of the Eagles, right? I mean, the Eagles, they peaked, they got the Super Bowl, which was awesome, but then they never really got back to that, and we know they fired Doug Peterson, and things just got ugly there. Hey, the Saints. I mean, the Saints have that sustained success where Dan Campbell came from. Every single year, pretty much, they're going to be in the playoff race, even this year. Even this year, you have Trevor Siemian out there. You got Jameis Winston out there. I mean, they were the only team, I think, in history that had 2 quarterbacks throw 10 touchdown passes. You got both of those guys throwing touchdown passes, and you're right there in that playoff mix at the end of the season. And there's just a few teams like that. You could probably throw the Rams into that mix. I guess since Sean McVay has came in and he's kind of put them on the map since that time, as you kind of expect them to be in the playoff race. Now, they did it their own way. They went all in. They had a good first season. They just got their quarterback. McVay comes in, and they go all in right away, and they're going for it. Our situation, every situation is different. Ours is a little bit different because of where we were with salary cap, where we were financially, kind of some of the money that we had locked up. And, of course, for us, we had Stafford, who was our quarterback, that kind of like requested a trade. So at that point, that shook things up a little bit. We know the Jared Goff thing went down. So every situation is different, but that's the point. He wants this multi-year plan for sustained success. And he said the foundation is laid. Speaking of adversity for the Lions, like we said, we know we had to deal with a lot of injuries, and he said we were kind of forced due to circumstances to play some of these young guys. I think especially on offense, but really both sides of the ball. We were forced into playing some of these young guys that we had, giving guys opportunity. I mean, if you look at the cornerback position, for example, we were forced to giving Jerry Jacobs an opportunity because as much as it's tough to see our cornerback get depleted like that, and you go from thinking Okuda and Amani are starters to all of a sudden, just like that in a few weeks, you're down Iffy, you're down Okuda, you don't have Quentin Dunbar like you thought you would coming into the season, and before you know it, you're so deep at the cornerback position where you're looking at Bobby Price, and that actually ended up giving us an opportunity because Price was struggling big time. An opportunity to get to see Jerry Jacobs. And we didn't really know much about Jerry Jacobs in the training camp. I mean, I remember he made a couple plays. I actually remember watching him get a pick the first day of training camp that I was there, I think. But it wasn't, this guy wasn't expected to really play defensively, just going to be a depth guy. But we were kind of forced because of the circumstances, because of the injuries that we had, to put that guy on the field. And, well, now we know, hey, Jerry Jacobs, he's going to be part of the future because this guy's nice. And he's under contract through 2023. So is A.J. Parker. He's kind of another guy you can throw that mix, but I wouldn't say for sure because he came in the year expecting him to be the slot cornerback. We expected that to happen based on the preseason and what was going on. But he said this. He said, I have an available free agent board, veteran free agents. I have this board where if we need somebody, we could always try to go get this veteran free agent with all the injuries that we had. He just let our young guys play for the experience. And we laid a good foundation. He said we stuck to it. We let the young guys play. He said we won't be afraid to play the young guys. I think Aaron Glenn said that same thing about Derek Barnes earlier this season or something like that. We won't be afraid to play the young guys. And he even said going forward next year and the year after that, 3 wins is not cool. You're wanting to be much more competitive than that. Would that be different? Would you then maybe look to some of those veteran free agents? Because this year laying the foundation, you wanted to play those young guys. That was part of your plan. But this year was a little bit different. Brad Holmes said that no, he would continue to trust the young guys. I think that points to a few things. First off, being confident, trusting the guys that you brought in and the moves that you made. So through the offseason, the UDFAs, the draft picks that you made, trusting that those guys will be able to contribute for your team, that they'll be prepared. And it's also like Brad Holmes said that they were pretty active throughout the waiver wire this year. They got a lot of young players that they brought in, and it's the trust and confidence in your coaching staff to have these guys prepared that while they may be young, because you bring in this vet, you kind of expect them to be quickly ready to go, understand what's being asked of them. But it's not like, oh, wow, he's got potential to be this. You kind of just know who the guy is. But it's trusting that you're going to be able to take these young guys and have them ready to go over having to go get a veteran. So, of course, some of these players that got to play this year, down the road, if they're backups, they'll be much more ready to go because they got that opportunity to play now. So, for example, if a guy like Jerry Jacobs, if he isn't a top corner going forward, but you have him and he's played and he's gotten reps, if a cornerback goes down, you don't have to look to, oh gosh, we got to get a vet corner because, yeah, we got this young guy, but we're not really sure what we got here. We're just looking for him to improve, but we've only seen it in practice. It's like Aaron Glenn said, you can't be afraid to play the young guys. You can't be afraid to put them in the fire, all right? You can't stay on the driving range all day. You got to let him play. But now he has that experience. You can just put him in. You're like, hey, I know he's good. I know he can play. All right, we're fine putting this guy in the game. We don't have to go get that type of vet. So I guess that's kind of what Brad Holmes is saying. We went through a ton of different avenues at different positions. I look at the receiver position. We literally went through every single receiver at one point this season, aside from Javon McKinley. We played every single receiver, even including the practice squad at one point this season, aside from a Javon McKinley. I think McKinley may have been like IR at that time, though, so I don't even think he could have played. We went through every option at the receiver position. So that's what the Lions did. They went with the young guys, and I would say it did work out because, again, we got to learn a ton about these young guys, and it did become valuable experience. We had a lot of opportunities to close some games early in the season, and we didn't. Some of that was the young players, maybe not knowing what's going on, doing the wrong thing. We saw in the Ravens game, remember our cornerback played it wrong. He played zone. Everybody else was playing man coverage. So we had left a wide open receiver on 4th and forever. You don't like to learn from losses. You'd rather learn from wins and be like, okay, I got to fix that. But it was something that kept hitting us and biting us early in the season. For the first half of the season, we got bit with it over and over and over, is that we just kept making mistakes and we couldn't find a way to make the plays to get off the field. And it's unfortunate that some of those guys we didn't get to see, like a Jacobs, but you definitely saw the improvement throughout the season. So it's like Brad Holmes said, that'll be very beneficial for us going forward with those guys having this experience now under their belt. Heading into this offseason, he said, this will be better. He said free agency will be better. The draft will be better, basically because they're going to have more resources. With free agency, we were kind of strapped at a lot of spots just because of how the free agency went. Certain guys that we had locked under contract, but also the NFL, the salary cap was pretty low last season, so that changed things up big time. You didn't have a ton of resources. Now, we will have more this year, yes. All right, are we crazy rich? No, we're going to have to make some things happen, like a Trey Flowers. He may be on his way out. We've talked about this. If you want to see our upcoming free agents video, we go into this a little bit deeper. We talk some numbers, things like that for the Lions, looking at their cap space. Will be better, is what he said with free agency. Now, they're still looking for the same guys. He said they were looking for Lions. We're looking for those guys, gritty. He said we learned what kind of football team we are. We're a gritty team. We're still looking for those players with the chip on their shoulder. Just may not all be like one-year deals like this offseason was basically all one-year deals that we gave out this offseason, which is why we have so many upcoming free agents. But we gave out a ton of one-year deals. So it's going to be a better free agency is what he said. I would say, I would explain it's probably a more active free agency. And that will mean, I think, a lot of re-signings. The draft will be better because, again, you have more resources with this year's draft, with the Stafford trade, getting the extra first-round pick, not only for this year, but also for next year, but just this year. And then also the comp picks. I mean, that also ties into free agency because of where the Lions were financially, not bringing back a Kenny Golladay, but also not really having the money to go like, hey, we're going to go spend $18 million a year on a different receiver, not really having that money because of our financial situation. It means that we're going to be getting these comp picks. We're looking at 3 comp picks this year, which could put us into the double digits. We're looking at possibly 11 draft picks this season, a 3rd-round comp pick for a, Kenny Golladay, possibly a 5th-round draft pick or something for Marvin Jones, maybe a pick for Jamal Agnew. We'll see where the 3rd one may come from, but you're looking at now comp picks because we didn't really replace those guys. He just let those guys walk. Now, speaking of young guys playing, like we said, due to circumstance, he said 6 of the 7 players that we drafted this year started at one point this season. He said even Jamar Jefferson was active for us at points this season, and he was helpful for us. That's one thing I wish we would have seen a lot more of Jamar Jefferson. I wish we would have got to see more of him from his rookie year to see more of what he was about. We just saw such a limited amount of opportunities for him, and I thought he ran the ball really well when he did run it. We just didn't see him that much. And I get it, our running back group is deep, and that's one of the positions that he kind of brought up as a strength of this team. No question, we know that. I do wish we would have seen a little bit more of Jamar, but it is true, we did play a lot of our young guys this season. 6 of the 7 did start at one point. Sewell, of course, started at tackle, and he had a fantastic season, especially once he went back to right tackle. Levi was a starters at times this season. He was kind of inconsistent with playing time. Ali McNeil, he came in as a starter, so we already knew about that one. Derek Barnes started at some point due to injuries, and it's like Brad Holmes said with Derek Barnes with his improvement. I thought he made a fantastic point. He said, you look at the touchdown that he allowed versus the Packers. And look, Derek Barnes, right? I mean, he's only played inside linebacker for 1 year. I mean, we drafted this guy. He played inside linebacker for 1 season. Before that, he was a defensive end. So this is still a new spot to him, right? He's still very young in this spot playing an inside linebacker role. But I thought he made a really good point. That touchdown that he gave up to the Green Bay Packers, where he was maybe a step behind, maybe just missed the football. It was a really good, well-thrown pass by Rodgers. But that pass that he gave up on a touchdown, he said 4 or 5 weeks earlier, he probably wouldn't have even recognized to go take that guy on the route, to go take the receiver. And he's probably right. Still does come down to making the play, that's for sure. But he is right. Like, you would probably have saw Derek Barnes earlier in the season not run with that guy at all, and he would have been wide open. So that's true. And we did see that this year. He would bite him down on play action, and he would lose somebody completely. He looked lost dropping into coverage earlier this season. He did. He just looked confused, didn't know where to be. But that's true. I mean, at least he followed him. He knew to go with him. He just didn't make the play. But that is growth. That's true. He's still very young to this. And he actually talked about a lot of these draft picks because they asked him a lot about him. Of course, what Penei Sewell was able to do this season. He was super impressed. His ability to be a left tackle in college, have an opt-out year, so he missed an entire season. Come back, prepare to be right tackle with us. Then you lose Decker, so you put him at left tackle. After struggling at right tackle in the preseason, put him at left tackle. Then to move him back to right tackle and how well he played at right tackle. And he's like, Sewell's only going to get better. He is the youngest guy in this draft with Kyle Pitts, so he's only going to get better. He was also asked about Levi, and he said with Levi, he thought at one point he might be a redshirt this season because of the injuries that he was dealing with. I did forget about that. So yeah, Levi was dealing with injuries before this season started. I don't know if you guys remember that. He was dealing with the back/hip injury, ended up going to see some specialist. He got prepared for the preseason, but they were talking about he may end up being a redshirt this season. Of course, he talked about the girls, and he said, look, with Levi, he understands that there's work that he needs to do. There's things that he must improve on. I think a lot of us, looking at Levi this year, you just didn't see the impact that we were hoping. And we know Brad was hyped. I mean, he was so hyped about getting Levi as his draft pick. We didn't see it from Levi this year. And the injuries is a big part of it. Said Levi is very self-aware. He understands there's a lot of things that he's going to have to work on this offseason. And next year is going to be a big year. That's very true. We need a lot out of Levi next season. And that's one of those spots where it's really interesting because we have had issues this year on the defensive line, especially without Brockers. Talk about, okay, where do we go in the draft this year? What do we, go after? And Brad Holmes said to the strength of his team, of course, the offensive line. And he also brought up the defensive line as a strength for this team. And we do have players we invested there. We know McNeil, he showed a lot more flash this year, so you're much more confident with that. But with a guy like Levi, you're expecting him to take over a way bigger role next year, possibly be your starter at defensive end, and that's with Michael Brockers, because Nick Williams may not be back. Jayshon Cornell, we haven't seen much of him. I mean, you just have a lot of unknowns on the defensive line right now, but you invested a second-round pick in that guy. It's going to be a big year next year for him. You're going to need a lot of improvement from Levi, and hopefully having a normal offseason will help there. But you're going to need a lot of improvement from this guy because we're going to be asking a lot of him next season. And that's one of those weird spots because I can't say you saw enough this year where you're like super confident on what it's going to look like next year. But knowing what you invested, you're rocking with that guy, right? That's the guy that Brad Holmes really likes. So he's going to trust it. He's going to trust Levi to make those improvements. And this will be a huge offseason for Levi, no question. We're speaking of the draft. This year, the Detroit Lions have accepted the invite to be the Senior Bowl coaching staff with the New York Jets. So the Lions are going to work the Senior Bowl once again. And I'm excited for this. I remember when Patricia worked the Senior Bowl for the Lions. We got a lot of behind-the-scenes videos. We got to see a lot of behind-the-scenes access. And by the way, why is it so important that the Lions learn how to finish and win games at the end with the coaching staff and also with the players? It's pretty much because of what was said the last time this was the case. Look at 2020 and just listen to what Bob Quinn says here after that season. Because remember, we just could not close a dang game. That's when dagger time became a thing. And obviously that didn't translate next year because we didn't close. The very first game, we blew a lead to the Chicago Bears. So that's why it's super important to know that our coaching staff and our players can prove that they can close football games. That's why I was looking for that so much this season.
Bottom line for our season, I'm going to say this word a lot, is we didn't finish. At the end of the day, we didn't win enough. And that's the bottom line. Our responsibility here is to look at that over the coming months and do everything in our power to make it better for next year.
For the coaches, working with the players, and it's very beneficial for the coaching staff as well. But it was cool as fans to get some of the behind the scenes from the Senior Bowl. So they're going to be working that again this year. Senior Bowl game is set for February 5th. For the Lions and for the Jets. So, of course, Robert Saleh and that staff and the Dan Campbell and the Lions staff. But this year is going to be apparently a little bit different with the Senior Bowl as they're going to be having the head coach play more of an advisory role. So, Robert Saleh, Dan Campbell, more of an advising role. They take 110 players. They split them into two teams, 55 on each side. If you guys know the Senior Bowl, and then, they pretty much play everybody in the game. And it's just an opportunity for the coaching staff to get to work with these players. It's a very nice advantage because you get this hands-on work with players that you scouted to work with them directly and see what you think about the guys and whether or not they are fits for your team personality wise, but also just getting to see them in person, what they're good at, what they're not good at, how they practice, all of that stuff. But this year's gonna be a little bit different. So you got the coaches playing more advisory roles and having some of those assistant coaches selected by the head coach to play bigger roles. So for example, if Dan Campbell selected Deuce Staley to be kind of like the head coach of the Senior Bowl, that'd be something that would happen. This will be, I think, very beneficial for our offensive coordinator search because I don't know, what Dan Campbell's going to do with this. And we talked about this yesterday, but I think this is a very nice perk for the offensive coordinator because maybe you say, okay, Ben Johnson, hold down the offensive coordinator, or Deuce Staley, be the offensive coordinator for the Senior Bowl. And you get a nice little feel of how they would do it. And especially for us, trying to figure out who that guy's going to be, you would get a nice feel of how that guy handles that offensive coordinator role for the team. So I think that'll be a nice little benefit for us. Brad Holmes did say last time they were working the Senior Bowl with the LA Rams, they ended up bringing in a lot of players from the Senior Bowl that they got to work with. So this could be huge this year to get to work with these guys for the Lions, and the Lions may go grab some of these players that they get to work with hands-on directly. I've been working on this draft stuff for going through the entire year, right? They've been working on this. He said we've seen everybody. We're going to use the technology and things like that, and of course the manpower, but then just having the Senior Bowl on top of that will give them even more insight to these players. So there's that thorough process that's going to be ongoing throughout, up to the draft day, and they didn't really give us any insight on anything there. They were asked about the top pick in this year's draft, having the second pick in this year's draft. He hopes there's a playmaker with that number 2 pick. He wouldn't go into, who he's going to draft. He said every draft is different. Some drafts it's a little bit more, middle of the draft heavy. Some drafts a little bit deeper. And he said this draft, every position, and remember, he gave us some good good insight on this last year. So we'll see leading up to the draft, what he tells us about this through his pressers. But he said, last year he was telling us certain positions that he felt like were heavy in the draft and felt like we're deep in the draft. He said this year he thinks every position is good for the draft. Now, he didn't necessarily say what kind of draft he thought this was. He just said being at number 2, you would hope to get a playmaker with that spot. So he didn't really give us much insight on who he would go with at 2 or anything like that, but it's still super early in that process. So even though they've seen every player, they're still very, very early, and he'd say we're hoping for more clarity after this Senior Bowl on that decision. Holmes also spoke on Dan Campbell, of course, and I know I've seen this quote all over social media, but it was one that definitely sticks out as soon as he said it. He said, Dan has the it factor. Either you have it or you don't. That's what he said about Dan Campbell, is that he could tell he has that it factor. He said he's loved the job that Dan Campbell has done this season. He talked about when adversity showed up, how they responded to that.
On Sunday and Monday morning, I'm seeing Dan, and first thing is that, I'm driving into work saying, man, I can't wait. I can't wait to get started for this week. And then I see Dan, and Dan's like, man, we're about to score 30 points this week. Like, it was no like, no, it's like, that's just how we are, and so, and it was a testament for everybody in the building.
It made me laugh because it was like 30 points. That was something that we really struggled to do up until the end of the year. But he said that was the approach that Dan Campbell took. So he said Dan Campbell has the it factor, and either you have it or you don't. All right, so apparently Dan Campbell's got in. He didn't, of course, say who he's going to bring back or anything like that. I'm expecting a lot of re-signings this offseason. I think that's going to be a huge part of it. There's financial things that play into that, and they have time, and he said, we'll be working with that. However, a few specific upcoming free agents, one being Tracy Walker, who he said, Tracy Walker, he bought into everything.
We're going to how to finish, bro. Now we're going to continue to come back and we're going to build, bro. Like I said, bro, that's the way we come finish, bro, and I appreciate everybody in here, bro. And we got lines on 3. 1, 2, 3.
He was asked about Charles Harris. He said Charles Harris has had his best year. He's been a great fit for this defense. He said he loved it here. Both of these guys, they fit what we're about. And then later on, he actually brought up some free agents on his own specifically. He brought up Alex Anzalone, who he said he did well this year, Khalif Raymond, and again, he brought up Charles Harris. Look, I definitely think, I think we went through it, and again, check it out. We did upcoming free agent video, and we looked at all the upcoming free agents for the Lions, and kind of a first look. I could see all those guys being brought back this offseason when we go through it. I'm telling you, I'm expecting a lot of re-signings, but especially guys like Tracy Walker. I think the Lions really like him. Of course, we know that, Aaron Glenn likes him. Then you also got to throw a guy like Jalen Reeves maybe into that mix, who I think they like him a lot too. Charles Harris, who, like you said, he's a fit for us. The way that he approached this. I know they also asked Romeo about Charles Harris, and he said, look, Charles Harris came in. When he joined this team, he got out to a hot start. And I think everybody took notice of it, and he continued that to the season. But yeah, clearly Charles Harris had his best season of his career. Not even close. So a lot of that was just opportunity as well, though. He didn't get a ton of opportunity in some other spots. But definitely I thought the scheme fit Charles Harris extremely well, and it brought his strength out big time. I know there was these charts put up about Charles Harris production versus double teams and just production per play, which showed him some love. He was a little bit above the middle of the pack there. Also asked about Jared Goff, of course. Now, Jared Goff is his dude, right? Jared Goff is Brad Holmes' guy. And this takes us back to the bye week when I was like, man, you got to do something. This is your guy, right? You got to do something for this guy. Get something here, because we were just having big problems. So we talked about this yesterday. But according to Brad Holmes, this is what he said about Jared Goff. He said,
I've been talking about it at length. You guys have heard me talk about it all the time, about just like the mental toughness and the physical toughness and his resiliency. And we talk about will, talk about grit. That's why he fit from the very get-go. And then the success he had late, it all came from that, because he had some rough patches. He had some adversity that he had to fight through. And I give him all the credit in the world that he stayed the course. Some tweaks were made, some changes were made, some, let's call it reinforcements, some players emerged, and but he played really good football. It wasn't a surprise that he played good football, because I guess my history with him, I've seen him play some of his best football, so that wasn't a surprise, but I was more proud of, he showed that resiliency and mental toughness to push through, and he played good football last half of the season.
Part of that was, he would call it getting reinforcements. The reinforcements came in. We know those were Josh Reynolds and those were Taylor Decker coming back. Those were some of the reinforcements. We had to tweak a little bit of what we were doing. Of course, the play calling change. You were changing up your personnel a little bit, how you were utilizing that personnel. I wasn't surprised that he played well. He said, this is something that I've seen when he was, of course, with the LA Rams. He said, because he was pounding the table. Like, they asked him heading into that draft when they selected Jared Goff. He's like, I would trade up for Jared Goff. I would go up and I would get that guy. He was a big Jared Goff fan when he came out of the draft. They did it. They brought him in. And he said, I've seen him play well. So I wasn't even surprised that he played well with the circumstances that we had. All right. Now, look, we know Goff is under contract for a while, but the way it's set up for next year, it's very likely that he's back next season. They've asked Goff about this, and he said, look, I'm still under contract. I got no issue. If they want to go draft another quarterback, whatever they want to do, that's their decision. He said, I like it here, but I'm still under contract. So, he's still got a job to do, basically, is the point. But the way Brad Holmes put it is he's not surprised he even played well because he's like, I've seen it before. I think the Lions are going to put some help around it. But I would not be shocked if the Lions also went out and got a quarterback this offseason. I'm not like overlooking that because I could definitely see it happening. We haven't seen a lot of Brad Holmes. I could still see some, stuff thrown in there. You fall in love with a prospect, you might end up getting one. That's not to say it too. But if you fall in love with someone somewhere, they might end up taking a quarterback at some point in this draft. And I think it'll make sense if they do. I also think Tim Boyle's coming back this offseason, so I could see that being the 3 quarterback rotation. I'm kind of still in that boat that I've been when I'm thinking about what will happen at quarterback. Lions having Jared Goff, bringing back Tim Boyle, and then drafting a quarterback somewhere in this year's draft. Not the very top, but somewhere. They asked him about where the needs would be, and he said, we want to improve all the other areas, but the 2 strengths that he brought up, of course, were the offensive line. Now, hey, I'm not getting off the train of the Lions need another tackle. I'm not jumping off that boat. We need another right tackle. If he's got some versatility, great. If he can play some different spots, awesome. I'm not jumping off that boat, though, and I hope the Lions, please don't disappoint me, Lions, please. Get us some tackle. However you want to do it. It doesn't even have to be through the draft. All right, however you want to do it. But he brought up the offensive line, of course, as a strength because as starting unit, yeah, it is. And we also learned that we have a nice backup center as well. And Jonah Jackson really impressed me with his ability to play center. I give him a lot of credit for that. He also brought up the defensive line. Again, the defensive line did not show us that all season. They showed us flashes. Brockers was pretty consistent in there when he was on the field, at least stopping the run. He's not much of a pass rusher, though. We know that. We brought him in. But we didn't always see that with the D-line, but you did invest there last year. I mean, that was a huge investment for the Lions last season. You brought in Brockers. You drafted Aleem 3rd round. You drafted Levi 2nd round. That was a huge investment for them. So he brought that up as a strength, probably because of what he's put into that position. But next year is going to be a big year in terms of needing improvement. Because it doesn't sound, at least right now, go early in this draft and try to address and add more help to the defensive line unit. They're going to rock with the guys that they have. They just need big improvement out of these young guys, trusting that these guys will do it. And I get it. Those are the players that you picked, so I understand it, right? You just don't feel as confident with the D-line as you do with the O-line. Because this O-line, a lot of these guys, you kind of knew what they could be about before you even saw them this year. We just had a lot of young players on the D-line. But O-line, I mean, look, we knew what Decker was about when he got on the field. Jonah Jackson, we saw him for a year. Frank Ragnow, we knew what he could be about. Evan Brown was the big surprise in there. That guy was awesome. Right guard, Big V, we knew he was much better at guard, and getting another year should have been beneficial, and it was. And Sewell was your top pick of the draft, and he lived up to that. But for the D-line, yes, we will need to see that improvement this offseason, no question. We're going to need to see them get better, specifically with a guy like Levi. Because like I said, you don't have a lot of proven guys behind that. You have a Brockers. Who knows if Nick Williams comes back? But after that, you don't really know what you have on the D-line. Between Jayshon Cornell, having Deshaun Hand no longer here, having Bruce Hector, who's a practice squad player, you have a lot of question marks after that. So Lions may bring in some depth this offseason, but in terms of strengths, so you're looking at early draft picks, sounds like he thinks D-line's a strength, and he's just counting on these guys to improve. Also asked about Jeff Okuda. He said Jeff Okuda was in such a good place. He really was. Okuda was balling in the training camp. I mean, I can't stress it. This guy was really good in the training camp, and that's why, for me personally, like, I don't know all the doctor side of it, the injury side of it, how he's going to come back. But if I can tell you one thing, if he came back as the exact same guy that I saw last year in training camp, I'd feel really darn good about Jeff Okuda playing a lot next season. I would feel really good about that. We'll just have to see how he returns with his injury. But I know he was balling into training camp. He stood out. You knew he was the best cornerback on this team in the training camp. You knew that. And even Amani said it. Time for the world to see what Jeff Okuda can be, basically. You know, it's time for that. And he'll have an opportunity next year. And we know he's stuck around the building going through his rehab. He said,
Jeff's doing a nice job in his rehab. You know, what I love about him is that he wanted to stay engaged and be around as much as possible. And, you know, I just hated for him when he got the injury because he was in such a good place, you know, just mentally and physically. And when he got hurt, it was just devastating.
We'll have to see how he returns, because that side of it, I know some people have thought that it's going to be super serious. He won't be the same guy, so that's why changing positions. Maybe it does come back like that. So we'll just have to wait and see how the injury goes. But he said right now he is on schedule, and we expect to have him back with us next season. For the Anthony Lynn situation, didn't go super deep into it. You know, he kind of said it wasn't like, you know, Anthony Lynn and Dan Campbell were having problems together. We talked about this yesterday. He said the one thing was it was just cool to see Dan Campbell grow as a play caller when he took that over. He said Campbell came in my office and he was like, hey, I think this is the right thing to do for the team. And he 100% supported him in making that decision. It's cool to see Dan Campbell grow and get good at it. Like, he was good at it. And he said, you know, Dan Campbell will make that decision. He said, I told Dan Campbell, it's up to you, you know, whether or not you want to be the play caller or not going forward. But he was basically like, man, I'd have no problem if Dan Campbell wanted to continue to call plays, because he did well calling plays. And I got no issues with it either. It is going to kind of be a personal preference, but he said, I know he'll make the right decision of what's best for the Lions. And he also was asked about Trey Flowers. Now, Trey Flowers' answer was a little bit different than the other ones. So the other ones he went on a little bit longer with. I know we didn't see a ton of Trey this year because of another injury, but he kept this one kind of short and sweet. He said Trey Flowers is the ultimate glue guy, the ultimate leader for your team. He said, you know, he fits what we are all about. But that's pretty much all he said about Trey Flowers. And he was like, you know, we'll have those discussions down the road. Look, I don't think Trey Flowers is coming back next season. I don't think we should completely count it out, because it's definitely still possible that he comes back, especially if he takes a pay cut. But I don't think he'll be back next year. Just when you look at our financial situation, we look at some of the guys that could be brought back, especially Charles Harris, already having a Romeo under contract. I don't see Trey coming back, especially if he's going to come back not with the same contract. But the way he answered that question, like, you're not going to give away who's staying and who's going, right? He's going to answer the questions the proper way, I guess you could say, the uniform way. But just how short he kept it, how short and sweet. And he's like, you know, we'll have those discussions for down the road. I just don't think Trey Flowers is coming back. And finally, he wrapped it up with saying, I think it's evident, you know, what we are building here. We have an outstanding culture. He thinks it's evident we're a gritty team, and he hopes that the word gets passed around what we are about. Pumped. Now we get the Senior Bowl, so we're going to have videos on that. We're going to get to see some inside there. The draft coming up. Like, the offseason is a beautiful thing. It really is. It's a beautiful time. All the optimism, the excitement, the picks, the draft videos. It's a beautiful time. It really is. Free agency and next year. Because, like he said, the thing that made me the most excited about what he said is when he kept saying the foundation is laid. So the foundation's laid. 3 wins not okay. Trust me, if we win 3 games next year, that will be a problem. Just trust me on that. That's not good. That won't be okay. But I don't think we're winning 3 games next year. I think we can definitely be a good team. I'm just excited to see where the Lions approach this. One thing I will take away is, Lions, please still address tackle depth, please. By the way, I saw something today. We were 11-6 against the spread this year. So I guess if we were at a winning record at anything, it was that. I mean, if you betted on the Lions this year, every single game, you probably won some darn money, because we were 11-6 against the spread. So for bettors out there, congratulations. I guess I don't know why. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, man. We're going to be working on some more draft stuff tonight. I've been already working on it before this video. I've been watching some edge rushers, and I'm working on doseofdn.com. So make sure you look that up on Google if you want to get some insight on some of the prospects I've been looking at. I know I don't have a ton up there right now. There's not that much up there, but I'm slowly putting notes into that. I have a lot of notes in here, but I got to put them in there. Anyways, that's doseofdn.com. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. And once again, link is in the description. If we could, let's get that man Michael Banks into the Hall of Fame, man. Click that link. It's free. Vote him in. He represents the Detroit Lions. All right, we got to get a Lions fan in there. That's something that we can't control as Lions fans, is making sure that a fellow Lions fan, the Packers fans, no, we are loyal, diehard fans, and he represents that. So let's make sure we get Mr. Michael Banks into the Hall of Fame. Click that link in the description for HallofFans.com and vote. It's free. Thank you for watching, and you can do it daily. And I'm out.